Our next speaker is a cybersecurity thought leader who has established and executed cybersecurity strategy across multinational banks and large organizations over a decade. Over this period, Imtiaz won several awards in categories of strong leadership and collaboration, innovation, best design, and engineering, to name a few. Imtiaz is here to share his experience and discuss what goes into designing and executing a winning cybersecurity strategy. Thank you for your time, Imtiaz. Please welcome Imtiaz Khan, presenting on designing and executing a cybersecurity strategy.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who are joining us from Singapore, Niha, and Salamat, Tenga. Before I start talking about what goes into designing and executing cybersecurity strategy, I'd like to talk about a story first. This story is from 1415. There is a well-known play of Shakespeare, and this story is about Henry V, King of England. And this story is about a famous battle of Agincourt in 1415. At the time, what happened was during this battle, one night, the English troops were vastly outnumbered by the French. The morale of the soldiers was pretty low. So what the English king did was he went into disguise night before the battle, and he had conversations. He had a chat with his men, and he tried to understand what their problems were. And he consoled them. He tried to encourage them, and he tried to understand how he could solve the problems that they were facing. The following morning, he goes into battle, and he leads the battle from the front, leading to a decisive victory. His leadership style wasn't at the back of the line. He was actually right at the front with his troops, doing the charge and actually leading his men to victory. So why am I talking about this? If you're a CISO, if you're a security leader, and you'd like to design and execute a successful and winning cybersecurity strategy, the same principle applies. You have to get involved. You have to lead from the front. Same principle applies if you are drafting a cybersecurity strategy and you're executing cybersecurity strategy. How does this relate? Let me give you an example here. The example is, if your business wants to go live with a particular platform, there's a project. One way, and probably not the best way, of assisting your business provide a good security posture is, right before they go live, you produce a pen test report, and you demonstrate to the business you've done your job and how bad, or what the issues are, what the flaws are, possibly leading to delays in go live. That is one way of doing it. Another way is you and your team are involved with the business right from the word go. Your team, yourself, you're involved during the ideation phase of what the business is trying to do. You're involved during design phase. You're providing security design patterns. Your team is involved during coding phase, during development phase, build and test cycles. Your team is actually in the trenches, working with the development teams, with the testers, with the project managers. And then at the end, you can still have your pen test and produce your pen test report. The outcome would be vastly different. So as a cybersecurity leader, as you go about executing security strategy, you have to be able to lead from the front, and you have to be involved. It's super critical. So that's number one, right? Which is key to executing your strategy or designing your strategy. So the next up is you have to have passion. You have to make sure that you yourself have passion and the skills, and these are the key successful drivers, not just for yourself but for your team. If we talk about an example of Apple and the development of iPhone, Steve Jobs was passionate at his job. He was really good at his job. He had an eye for detail, and he promoted good ideas. And then he knew how to reject bad ideas, or he would ask his teams to go away and come back with better ideas. He also surrounded, what's critical is he also surrounded, his teams were very smart, they were very dedicated, they were passionate. The whole story of iPhone, which is the best-selling phone on the, the second best-selling at the moment after Samsung, is it started as a secret project. The iPhone started as a secret project, and Steve Jobs didn't know about it. And when it was brought to him, he loved the idea and he promoted it and he made it better. So you have to make sure you have the passion and the skills, and so does your team. Number 3 is you have to have a cybersecurity strategy. You just can't leverage on someone else's strategy. Every organization is different. If you go, okay, my organization wants to deploy containers, or they're deploying an API gateway, or they're going to leverage particular cloud services, and I'm just going to, my security strategy is I'll just bolt security on top of what the IT project or IT projects are trying to do. Then yeah, you cover one small aspect of what the organization is. You miss all the other bits and pieces. You miss to understand what the risks are to the organization, how to prioritize. You miss to understand how, what is the threat landscape. You miss to, you fail to understand what are the business priorities, right? So you have to, your cybersecurity strategy has to factor in all these things, and your IT landscape is one aspect. You have to make sure that you invest time and resources and efforts in developing your cybersecurity strategy. If you don't have a cybersecurity strategy, then your security function would be a bit like the rudderless boat that you see in this picture here. All right. Now, next up, what goes into designing and executing a good cybersecurity strategy? How do you go about what is a good strategy, or what is strategy? Right. Strategy is a set of prioritized tasks to achieve an objective, and you have a plan and you're going to execute that plan. That is your strategy, right? And what is a good strategy? Let me, before I start talking about what are the key components of good strategy, let's talk about some stories here, right? I'll give a few examples. So a couple of months ago, Twitter, multinational organization, it's used by presidents and prime ministers and governments, disaster management organizations and relief organizations for the communications, media houses. If you are running a vast platform used by millions of people, then it would be pretty obvious that you have to understand what your risks are, and you have to do something about it. You have to have a plan in terms of how you go about mitigating those risks. Twitter was hacked by a 17-year-old, and if we boil down to what actually happened there, there are 3 reasons, right? Reason number 1 is RBAC, or role-based access, wasn't implemented properly. By some accounts, there's been some reports that there were 1,000 people who had full access to the admin console, which allowed the 17-year-old to start tweeting on behalf of Barack Obama and Elon Musk and Joe Biden, etc. Right? A lot of people had too much access. That's number 1. Number 2 is if your admins are getting phished, then you better do something about the training of your admins. And number 3, your 2FA, which wasn't strong enough, got bypassed. But that is how Twitter got bypassed. Capital One of America's biggest banks, is it got breached last year. One of the world's largest banks, 100 million records got breached. Now, what was the problem? It was a misconfigured web application firewall system, a misconfigured WAF. Right? This problem was known for years. Nothing was done. Another big hack that happened some time ago in 2017 was Equifax, one of the credit ratings agencies. 100 million plus records got breached of their customers. What was the issue there? An Apache server wasn't patched, right? Now, what is common between these three things, right? Do we really think that these organizations didn't have smart people, or they didn't have the budget, or their security programs were, or we're not delivering, or they actually didn't have the money? No. They fail to prioritize. These instances highlight that you have to understand what your risks are, and then you prioritize your risks. That is your number one aspect. As you go about designing a cybersecurity strategy, you have to understand, get the visibility of what your risks are, and you have to have a plan in place. You have to prioritize those activities. That is number one that goes in designing a good security strategy, right? Number two is you have to be a business enabler, not a business inhibitor, as a security function. If your business is into, if you're a bank in Europe, then you have to expose APIs, and you have to be able to, under the Open Banking European Commission. Same thing in Australia. Australian banks have to open up and be able to share the user records by next year, and have APIs live and running by next year. According to a 2018 Forrester report, 47% of organizations monetize or share information in some shape or form. 50% are shared through APIs. So if your business requirement is sharing data, then you have to be on the front foot as a security function. As a security leader, you have to be on the front foot. You have to make sure that, okay, you're able to provide business that comfort, that assurance. So your business is able to share data through your APIs in a secure and a robust manner. Obviously, you have to have stakeholder support. Your strategy has to be known. And as you go about transforming your security landscape, you have to be able to transform the culture. You have to be able to embed within the culture of the organization that you prioritize doing the right things, doing the important things in the right order, right? That's the kind of legacy you leave behind. These are some of the key aspects. And if you don't, if you're not doing these things, then you might have a bad strategy. Your bad strategy might be you're focusing on wrong things, you're prioritizing on wrong things, you're continuing to firefight. These are some of the aspects you might be indifferent to what the business is trying to do. So these are some of the aspects of your bad strategy. You continue with your legacy culture. Your strategy is locked up in lockers. No one knows about it. Now, key elements of executing. Now, we talked about design so far. Let's talk about some of the key elements of execution. Number one element of executing or successfully executing a strategy is you have to be able to sell it. You have to. How do you do that? You write a sound business case. You have to be able to demonstrate, your team has to be able to demonstrate how this strategy benefits the organization, provides a business opportunity, or provides a risk reduction. Another key element of having a sound business case is you have to give options. Option one might be, you have a couple of options, A and B, and they differ in your investment versus the benefit you get. But option C could be do nothing, right? But you have to give your business a bunch of options on how they're going to either reduce the risk or leverage the business opportunity, right? Key, super critical. If you want to execute your strategy, you have to be able to sell it and write a sound business case. Next up, you have to have a good plan. Doesn't matter whether you're using, you're using waterfall methodologies or agile methodologies. Yeah, your program has to be broken into executable chunks that are aligned up to delivering what the actual objective is. You have to have exec support. You have to you have to take your business, your risk teams, your internal audit teams along the journey. Your strategy has to be inclusive. You have to have skilled people. Your strategy has to be flexible. You have to, if something comes from the left field and it's super critical, then your strategy, if it's too rigid, that, okay, I'm not going to look at it because I've got my strategy approved and I'm going to ignore it, then that's a recipe for getting breached. So you have to be prepared to be flexible as you get visibility of risks or business opportunities or the threat landscape. Last up is all those things you're doing here. If your strategy, if you fail to operationalize the services you deliver as part of your security program, then everything you have done is failed, right? For that particular initiative. So what did we learn from the Twitter hack example I spoke about earlier, where there were, by some accounts, there was about 1,000 people who had, full console admin access that could tweet on behalf of Barack Obama and the others, right? If you, I'm sure Twitter has a good IAM system. They do have role-based access capabilities, and they will have segregation of duties. That platform will have those capabilities, and the fact that they were able to resolve this issue so quickly after the event happened shows that they did have the tools, but they were not being operationalized, right? If you don't operationalize your capabilities, then all your effort, time, and money has gone to waste. So it's a super key element to have a successful execution and strategy. So there's different types of strategies. There's a technical strategy. You can get the smart people in your security function, and your technical strategies are usually drafted and executed by security and IT functions with little involvement from the business, from the risk functions, from internal audit, etc. It's quick to draft, and it may be somewhat aligned to threat landscape, but not necessarily aligned to business roadmap or risks. A popular strategy is risk aligned, where you understand what your risks are, you understand what the business is trying to do, and you factor in all those various other things that we spoke about, what goes into a strategy, your threat landscape, your prioritization, your IT priorities, your IT strategy, etc. So that is typically what comprises of your risk-aligned strategy. Another type of strategy is where your business is strongly involved and they have strong control of your IAM project. You get high buy-in from the business because they're closely involved, but it's harder to execute. There is one more strategy, which is hybrid. Now, this hybrid strategy is a combination of all of the above, where you will get the best pieces from your technical strategy. You have a risk-aligned strategy, which basically gives you clear line of sight on, as you mature the security posture, how your risk is coming down. But for certain aspects of your security strategy, for your security program, there might be strong business involvement. For example, if you're deploying a new firewall, the business doesn't really care or doesn't need to know whether you go with Palo Alto or Checkpoint. Or if you're deploying DDoS prevention or protection capability, then the business doesn't need to get involved. But if you're deploying identity access management platform and you're deploying role-based access for your business users, this is where it will serve you good to give a fair bit of autonomy to your business. Obviously, with a framework, you give them a framework to design their roles, but the actual design of the roles and what entitlements get assigned and what are the segregation of duties between those roles, that's something that the business can decide. You can keep them involved, and you can keep them a fair bit of autonomy for these types of projects. So You can have a hybrid strategy where you give a lot of autonomy to the business where it makes sense. What is the best type of strategy? Unfortunately, I can't answer that. You have to decide. Every organization is different. The culture, the size, the budget, your security functions, your IT functions. You have to decide as a security leader, as a CISO, you have to be able to choose what you think will work in your organization. And what do you think, how you'll be able to execute it. So it's your call. I've outlined a framework on how you go about doing it. Thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much for that insightful presentation, Imtiaz. To the audience, unfortunately, we don't have time for questions immediately, but Imtiaz
Sure.
will be around for a little longer, and so you can just pop your questions into the Q&A, and we'll forward those questions to him. Make sure you get some responses. So once again, thank you for your time, Imtiaz.
Thank you, Vivian. Cheers. Thank you all.